Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to look at a word ending, words that end in the sound of shun. Now you'll realise that spelling wise there are many different variations of words that end in shun. The most common one is Tion, but there are many others. So you would use that, for example, in attention, but in ocean you'd use Cean. In technician you'd use Cian. In passion you'd use Sion. And incidentally, the word on the street is that Grace and Preston have had a great honeymoon. And let's think, is there any more? Tension, ocean, technician. Oh, and then there's Shion for fashion. So lots of variations. This one is the most common one. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use that N on the T line for all of them. So it makes it so much easier, so much faster, so much quicker, so much less thinking time. So if I add an O and an N on the T line being anything above where the root outline ends, we've got ocean. C and shun would be cushion, but it could also say caution. F and shun would say fashion. T and blend in the N and shun would say tension, and so on. We can add other letters to the shun. So for example, if someone had been cautioned, we can write the shun and then add the D. Now that is D and it's also T, of course, but because the N is on the T line, we have to join it. We have to join it to the N like we would if we were writing need or neat, and we can't change where it goes because it doesn't say shun unless the N is on the T line. So that's cautioned. So it's quite a simple little bit of the theory, this is. At the beginning, I said to you that Teeline is not a phonetic system of shorthand, but there are some exceptions. There seems to be actually quite a few exceptions, and this is one of them. But all those exceptions make it even easier. We don't have to think about the way a word is spelled. So let me give you a few word examples here then. So will you write for me passion? So you'd only need the P and the shun. Incidentally, the word on the street is that Grace and Preston have had a great holiday. Passion. Now will you write patiently? So P, shun, add the T, kick the L out of it. Patiently. And now will you write mentioned? M, N, shun and D. Now I've got another very, very useful grouping for you. When we have the word mention, we can do this for I have mentioned, I have shunned. In other words, we don't need the men. It's a good job because Brenda and Cruella, they haven't got one yet. They're still looking, but they're few and far between. I have shunned, I have mentioned. You have shunned, you have mentioned, and so on. You can of course write it in full, but it's always easier and quicker if you miss parts of it out. Now will you write musician? So you've got MS and shun. It's just as easy actually to carry on round with that S and put the I in, because you're going round anyway, so putting the I in helps you to read it back, musician. And now will you write efficient? There's another one where it's easy to put the medial vowel in, EFI and shunt, efficient. So it's just crossing it like that, efficient. It's actually easier to put that medial I in than it is to stop there, stop dead, efficient. And efficiently, of course, would have the I indicator at the end. Now will you write sufficient? Sufficient. And now will you change that to sufficiently? Just add the I indicator to change it to sufficiently. Next word, election. So E, don't put the baby on the floor, L, see and shun, election. And the last one, occasion and occasionally. So O, see, shun for occasion, O, see, shun, and I for occasionally, because we can kick that L out of it. We're getting fast, aren't we? We're getting good. This is brill. Now, before we continue with dictation, there are 1 or 2 special outlines that go with this section of the theory and 1 or 2 more word groupings. So, special outlines first. We write particular like this, P-R-T-C, partic. That's a special outline, and you can tick it off on your special outlines list because it requires daily practice. If I add an I indicator coming downwards, you won't be surprised to know that that's particularly. The special outline for prepare is just 2 P's. And so if we change that to preparation, we would add the shun. So prepare and preparation. There's no rhyme or reason sometimes to special outlines. You just learn them in a parrot fashion way, because writing them in full sometimes creates problems. The word programme is the next one. So PR blend, then the G and the M joined. Now, if it was written in full, of course, that M would go through, because if we refer back to last week's lesson, the GR blend would have the Mars bar, Grace would have the Mars bar written through for gram like this. But in the special outline programme, we join it on. So that's gram, but that's the special outline for programme. And now we've got 2 more for the shun. We've got I and shun for intention, and A and shun for attention. So intention with the I, attention with the A. And now I wonder if you can read this word grouping for me. Remember last time when we did the lyrics for Close to Crazy, I showed you that D doubles for R and T doubles for R. And although we haven't done that theory in full, you will know that that's DR. Then that's the Y for your, and then you've got the A and the shun for attention. You've probably worked out it says draw your attention. Now let's go one further. We've added 3 more words by just adding a C and a T, because we've missed out 2 of the little ones between draw your attention and this last one, which is CT. Have you got it? It is draw your attention to the fact. We're missing out the 2 there altogether. Draw your attention to the fact. So take all those on board and those special outlines and make sure you practice them. Now we're going to do a little bit of dictation then. So will you write, the young man had been cautioned many times. The young man had been, you can just put the full B for be or been, remember, or you can write it in full with the full B, like this, had been. So that's shorter, so I'm going to leave that one on. And then cautioned, new word for today, see, shunned, and then many times, many, and the M goes underneath for times. In some textbooks, it goes on the T line. So when I learned T line, I did it this way. Rosalie has done it from recent textbooks that way, has learned it from recent textbooks that way. So sometimes you will see a variation in our outlines, but they are both correct. If we put something down that wasn't correct, obviously we would refill. So we don't want to teach you incorrectly. So many times, I'm going to leave my outline on. You will have noticed when I'm writing lyrics from the songs that I sometimes hesitate because I'm thinking automatically of the ones I know, but I'm thinking that you've been shown alternatives that are in later textbooks, and I'm trying very hard to write those instead of the ones that I would automatically do. So I hesitate and think I should write the other one. So the young man had been cautioned many times. The next one. He stood in the dock at Brighton. He stood in the dock at Brighton. BR Blend. Take the top off the T, and it's a place because we have to put those proper name dashes underneath. He had a bright and breezy attitude. He had a bright and breezy attitude. Now, lots of this theory is from last time's video where you've got the BR, remember Brenda, so the T goes high. Breezy, you wouldn't put a Z in a word unless it began with a Z, so you've got the SI inside there, and attitude, ATTD. He had a bright and breezy attitude. That was his first grave mistake. So I'm going to join that was his first grave mistake. The jury looked across the courtroom at him. The jury looked, change the K to a C, across. Now you could put the S inside because it's CR Blend. That's almost like trying to hit a moving target. When you're writing at speed and your hand's having to travel fast from one side of the notepad to the other. So to actually stop and get that S inside can be so tricky that some people will put the R in there in a word like across. So again, you've got the choice. I'll leave that one on because it's probably the one that you've used because I showed you CR last time. Looked across the courtroom at him. They listened to the evidence against him. They listened to the, just a V under the line says evident or evidence, and it's on your special outlines list. Against, AGNST with the S outside the angle, him. Okay, you might like to pause the video, copy some of that down, take it down from dictation at various speeds that you can record for yourself or ask someone at home. So if you're doing 60 words a minute, clearly it's 1 word per second. If you're doing 80 words a minute, take the first 20 words and try to read them within 15 seconds. We will put more dictation on for you that's timed. Here's a passage of 1 minute at 60 words per minute. Ready? I have mentioned before that the young man was violent on many occasions. He was accused of causing grievous bodily harm to the young woman. He had left her in a grave state. He answered questions in a very abrasive manner. His parents were in court. Their faces were crimson as the details of the crime were revealed. So transcribe those words and then let's check whether your transcription is accurate and your outlines are also accurate. So we started with the sentence, I have mentioned before that the young man was violent on many occasions. Should look like this. I have shunned. If you put the men in, that's fine, it's still okay, but remember we said we could do without the men. I have mentioned before that the young man was violent on many occasions. Was violent. Put the V, it's a teenager, upstairs so that the L can be on the line. On little O-N, many occasions. O-C and shins. The next sentence. He was accused of causing grievous bodily harm to the young woman. He was accused of causing, grievous, the V goes inside, bodily, you don't need the L, kick the L out of it, harm, to the young woman. Now we've done young man by joining it on. We don't want to join the woman on because look what would happen. We'd get this. So what we can do for young woman is we can chop the wood because we know it's not going to be he's caused grievously bodily harm to young wood. So young woman, you can disjoin a W for the phrase young woman if you wish. Or of course woman in full like so. He had left her in a grave state. He had left her in a grave state. His parents were in court. Slope the H, parents, take the top off the N, were from last week, from the week before last now, W doubles for R, in court. Their faces were crimson as the details of the crime were revealed. Their faces were crimson as the details of the crime, Cruella likes Mars bars, were revealed. Okay, let's try that again, a little bit slower first of all, so that you can get the outlines absolutely accurate. So first of all, check those outlines and drill anything that you may have written in a longer form. So for example, if you'd forgotten the shun in occasions, or if you hadn't put the ung for young man and so on, practice those again before you take it down the second time. Now we're going to take it down at 40 words per minute this time, a little bit slower. If you notice grievous bodily harm, that is a very well-known abbreviation, isn't it? Grievous bodily harm. We could reduce that to GBH. However, in an examination situation, if grievous bodily harm was dictated and you transcribed GBH instead, you would be penalised. So it is important to know or to remember whether the abbreviated version or the full version is dictated, because you must transcribe exactly what is dictated. So let's try it again now, this time at 40 words per minute. Ready? I have mentioned before that the young man was violent on many occasions. He was accused of causing grievous bodily harm to the young woman. He had left her in a grave state. His parents were in court. Their faces were crimson as the details of the crime were revealed. We're going to finish today with a passage of 100 words, concentrating purely on shun. So not so much revision in this, just the theory that we've done today. I'm going to dictate them first of all, just one sentence at a time so that you can check your outlines. And then when you feel ready, you can take down the whole passage. So the first sentence is, climate change is caused by greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll start with climate with the C upstairs. Have you remembered that change is Chang? Is caused, CSD, by Greenhouse, that's a new word for today. The N goes inside and then the HS. Gas, emissions, another new word for today. So because these things are really new to you, you get doing really well if you get them right. Next one starts with a lovely phrase. There is no doubt about these assumptions. So there is no doubt can be written using that long T for THR that I mentioned earlier, like this. There is no doubt. Remember the B in doubt is silent, so it's just DT, the same as debt. There is no doubt. You could have done it like this. There is no doubt. I always put the O in no because those negative words are so important to get the sense accurate. So there is no doubt, or there is no doubt about these assumptions. So about these, the H comes straight down, and assumptions A, S, M and shins. It's debatable whether the P is silent or not. I'll say it is because then that's one stroke saved, one speed gained. Next one. Let's try that there is no doubt again. You choose which one of these two you're going to use. I'm going to use this one. There is no doubt that we are right in our assumptions. So there is no doubt that we are right. I'm going to join that we are all together. Remember you put a little E in between we and are, right? Now, in our was new last time, not last time, the time before. So the NW blend, in our. Remember we did in our, we did in our area, we did in our opinion. Such an important phrase. So do make sure you get that NW, or in this case NWR blend right. Assumptions, assumptions. Next one. The situation is not good. The situation is just ST-tion. I'm going to join together is not good. And again, I'm putting the O in not, but you don't have to do that. You could do this instead, is not good. It's still correct and perfectly good. Next one. The situation is, in fact, ruinous. So the situation is, now in fact, remember we did draw your attention to the fact earlier, so we're going to do in fact now with just the CT, and ruinous RNS. I would mention that this calamity will happen in our lifetime. So I chop the wood, and then just a shun for mention. Have you remembered we can do without the men? That this, slope the H, calamity, CLMTI, will happen, HPN, in our, that important in our, and lifetime, LF. You could do this three ways. You can actually put time in full because it seems to flow, or you can put the M underneath for time, or you can put the M on the T line for time. Your choice. We've got room for one more. European aims for cutting emissions should be made tougher. So European. Now, I'll be surprised if you've got this right. I don't think I would have done at this stage of the game. But Ursula likes chocolate. So when we put a picnic in, you get the UR. Now the E is silent, isn't it, in European? So it would look like this. There's Europe. And then we add the N. European. Tricky one that wasn't it? Aims. AMS. You could put the full A for aims because of the heavy sound of A, if you like. But there's no such word as AMS, is there? So you don't really need to. But you might decide to do it to distinguish between, for example, a word like atom, ATM, and autumn. So just AMS is fine for now. European aims for cutting emissions, emissions, should be made tougher. TFR blend. T and FR blend, that looks a bit wobbly there, but FR blend. Okay, we've got three more sentences. The next one is, this is a very urgent situation. This is a, that's going to test you, isn't it? Very urgent situation. So remember how we disjoin the S for this is, there's this is. So if we carry on coming down with the A, we've got this is a very special outline. Urgent, we've just reminded you that Ursula likes chocolate, she likes picnics, she also likes galaxy. Urgent situation is ST and shin. This is a very urgent situation. Next one, we need to take action now. We need to take action now, NW blend. And the last one, doing nothing is not an option. Doing nothing is not, or you could just do is not, remember, as I showed you before, an option, OP and shin. Don't get the O too big, otherwise it'll look like WP, shin. Okay, when you've practiced all those outlines and you've drilled the ones that you perhaps got wrong the first time, tricky ones like European, then you're ready for the dictation. And in this case, we've got 100 words. I'm going to start off by dictating at 50 words per minute. So last time we had 60 and 40. This is going to be 2 minutes at 50. Keep going for as long as you can. If you only get the first 2 sentences without a gap, that's brilliant. Then start again from the beginning, see if you can get 2.5 and then 3. Because every time you do it, you're practicing these all important words on shun. And that theory is really going from your short term to your long term memory so that you'll never hesitate on it. So have a go and see how you do. 2 minutes at 50 words per minute. Ready? Climate change is caused by greenhouse gas emissions. There is no doubt about these assumptions. There is no doubt that we are right in our assumptions. The situation is not good. The situation is, in fact, ruinous. I would mention that this calamity will happen in our lifetime. European aims for cutting emissions should be made tougher. This is a very urgent situation. We need to take action now. Doing nothing is not an option. We must all do our best to preserve the world we live in as much as possible. You know, it makes sense to do so. Now, in order to make that 100-word passage, I had to add 2 sentences to the end. And these sentences, of course, I didn't show you beforehand. So I wonder how you've done with those. Let's see. So the penultimate sentence was, we must all do our best to preserve the world we live in as much as possible. So we must all do our best to preserve the world we live in as much as possible. Now there's quite a lot going on there. This one, preserve thee. So you've got the PR together, so you know you have to write the P and lift the pen. Now the SR could go through it. Although R isn't a horizontal stroke, you can write an R through the P. So you could do that, or you could have done this for preserve, PR blend, and then SRV at the side of it. And then just adding the H on says there. So there's two alternatives there. Actually, it makes it easier, I think, to put the SR through for preserve that, but I wouldn't have expected you to get that right first time. And then this is a beautiful phrase, as much as possible. Remember, much is one of those words that's lost its legs, together with which, each, such. So if it's got its legs, that H would be sitting on the line. That's why it's on the T line, despite the fact there's no T in it. So when we write as much, we took the S inside, as much. And then another S for as, and then PS for possible, as much as possible. It's one to practice because it does come up a few times in examination passages. And then the very last sentence is, you know it makes sense to do so. So you know it makes sense. And then this is a lovely phrase, one of my favourites, to do so. It's only simple, 3 simple little words, but putting them all together like that in a grouping is a good way to finish off that passage. So carry on practising it until you can get it all down at 50. And then when we meet next week, you've got shun under your belt and we're ready to move on to the next part of the theory. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we'll see you again next week. In the meantime, don't get worried and don't get stressed. Let's love Teeline together.